County. You don't know me well enough to do that yet, but I do appreciate it. Thank you very much. My name is Lee McInnes. I am a member of the Indivisible Auburn Opelika Steering Committee, and on behalf of Indivisible Auburn Opelika, I would like to welcome you all to our People's Town Hall meeting with Congressman Mike Rogers of Alabama's 3rd Congressional District. We truly appreciate you coming out tonight to talk with our elected member of Congress. Indivisible is a nationwide grassroots nonpartisan movement of thousands of local groups like Indivisible Auburn Opelika. It is committed to opposing the current administration's unconstitutional and illegal takeover of the United States government. Indivisible coordinates campaigns led by local groups to counter right-wing policies and build an inclusive democracy of bold, progressive policies. We also want to hear why, to show that it's a nationwide grassroots organization, we have members of Indivisible Lake Martin here with us. This is Indivisible Auburn Opelika's 2nd event, and we're incredibly happy for the level of the support the community has shown. The committee would like to take this moment to recognize everyone who attended our Hands Off rally on April the 5th. So if you were at the Hands Off rally, would you please raise your hand? That applause would have been much louder, except more than half of you had your hand. We want to thank all of you who participated, because as a grassroots movement, we accomplish nothing without your support. Before we proceed, I want to introduce the other members of the steering committee who set up the event tonight. They are Kristen Hennert, Nicole Carter, Lindsay McCormick, and Adam McCullum, who is also a member of our committee, could not be with us tonight, unfortunately. For the record, your steering committee includes a college student who recently retired from the United States Navy, a pediatrician, a retired federal civil servant, a television producer, and a small business owner. Not a single paid political agitator in the group. As a nonpartisan group, we want to emphasize that the purpose of this meeting is not to attack or criticize any specific political party. It is merely an opportunity to express your concerns to our elected member of Congress. Now, I don't know if any of y'all saw the WRBL news story today about this meeting. I'm going to read why we're here from Dr. Nicole Carter, who said it way better than I could. Many of us in Alabama's 3rd Congressional District are worried about the decisions being made in D.C. and how they are impacting our families and our community. We had hoped to have Congressman Rogers join us for a town hall where we, his constituents, would ask real questions and share our concerns with him. We have been trying to contact the congressman for several weeks. I sent an email to them a week ago. I was told that he had pre-scheduled other events and would not be able to be here. Today, his press person announced Congressman Rogers lives in the district and is in near constant contact with his constituents and local leaders. The Democratic Party has encouraged activists to hold events that they have branded as town halls in an effort to ambush Republican members of Congress. We welcome any constituent to contact any of our 3 offices. I'll ask you a question. How many of you have tried to have contacted Mike Rogers' office? Now keep your hands up. If he responded, keep your hand up. Otherwise, put your hand down. Thank you for the visual aid. But we did want to have someone for you to talk to, so I would like to introduce Congressman Flat Mike Rogers. This doesn't mean the congressman won't have a chance to see tonight's proceeding. Is that the congressman calling in? This event is being live streamed over Indivisible Auburn Opelika's platforms, and a copy of the video is going to be made available to the Congressman's office. Please take this opportunity to express your views and ask your questions of the Congressman. We'll have an opportunity for all of you to do that later on. We will have five speakers who will tell us how the current administration's policies are affecting them in their specific areas of expertise. After that, we'll open the floor for your questions to the Congressman. Anyone can ask a question, and we will take as many questions from the floor as time allows. I will talk more about that a little bit later on. I want you to be engaged. You've already shown you can be enthusiastic, but please remember, Indivisible is a nonpartisan organization. We are also open to any points of view, so be engaged, be enthusiastic, but also be courteous and respectful to all our speakers. Can we do that?
Yes.
Okay. Our first speaker tonight is Amy Thomas. Amy holds a Bachelor's of Arts degree from Auburn University and earned her JD degree at the Cumberland School of Law at Samford University. She has 18 years experience in higher education research and administration with a concentration in proposal development. She came to work at Auburn University in 2008 as a contract and grants specialist, and for the last 6 years has served as the Director of Research Programs and Grants in the College of Science and Mathematics at the university. Please be aware that while Amy is an employee of Auburn University, she is here as a private citizen and not a representative and does not speak for Auburn University. Amy Thomas.
Can you hear me? I know this mic is not great. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you today. I do work at Auburn University. I'm the Director of Research for the College of Sciences and Mathematics. But like you said, I'm not here in that capacity. It is part of what gives me subject matter expertise to talk about the cuts to federal funding research across the board. I will say that as an attorney, I did practice in the courtroom. I tell people I'm a recovering attorney because I left that profession and dropped by accident into the profession of research administration, which has been very, very near and dear to my heart, and I'm very passionate about it for many reasons. One, when I did practice, I practiced in constitutional law and was successfully argued some constitutional cases in front of the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals, which is historically a very conservative court, but argued cases against municipal governments which tried to regulate political speech. And it was a David Goliath case. And so that started my advocacy for when the government interferes in what is best for citizens, especially from a constitutional perspective. Then moving into this role as a research administrator, I work very closely day in and day out with the most brilliant people that I've ever met, whose only goal is to further science in this country. They are not out to make money. They don't make a profit from it. It is the most audited group of funding by far. There is not frivolous spending in this, and so to be under attack right now is the most ridiculous thing that I can think this government could spend its efforts on, and I'll go into that a little bit later. From there, I've become an advocate for funding research because I have a daughter that has a very underfunded chronic illness, and she and I are traveling to Washington next week to hopefully speak to a real Mike Rogers and other of our state constituents to try and further research for Dysautonomia International, which is the organization that represents her illness, and it's probably a very a bad time to go and ask Congress for money when they're slicing it left and right. But I still think it's important that as citizens, we continue to allow our voice to be heard, even when we're probably going to be met with some negative reactions. And so, you know, I'm still here tonight. I'm still going to go to Washington next week, and I appreciate you all hearing what we have to say and hopefully furthering that as well. So from a standpoint of federally funded research at the university level, the state of Alabama has 4 what we call R1 institutions, and I know we've got some Auburn folks here who are going to know this language, but for those of you who don't, I'll just explain it as best I can, because there's a lot of misinformation out there and clickbait headlines, and I think getting the right information out there is the most important tool we have to fight against what's happening. But there are 4 R1 institutions. An R1 institution has to have research expenditures in over $50 million per year and grant at least 70 doctoral degrees, basically research-related doctoral degrees each year to be classified as an R1. The University of Alabama Birmingham is our largest R1 institution, which makes sense because they are the medical university, so they have a lot of federally funded research from National Institutes of Health. Auburn University is the second on the R1 list, and so we are, a lot of that comes from our agriculture funding, but also our basic science funding, our NASA funding, and our National Science Foundation funding. After that, we have the University of Alabama Tuscaloosa, and then finally we have the University of Alabama Huntsville on that list. And so from across the state, we have a lot of federally funded research, and the overall economic impact of that federally funded research is over $916 million in this state is derived from that pot of money that comes into this state. And so the fact that we are under attack right now is not just like it's just going to affect Auburn University and a couple research scientists, or just going to affect UAB and the medical school. This has waves that touch part of the state infrastructure, and the economic impact of the state would be so great. The timeline of kind of what has happened, because I don't want the misinformation to continue, it has been a full-on, everyday whiplash effect of what has happened when it comes to federally funded research. So on January 20th and 21st, the first wave executive orders came out from the administration. A lot of them did not actually have any action items for those of us who are grantees or recipients of that funding, but it instructed the Office of Management and Budget, who gives us our money through the forms of contracts and grants, to begin reviewing all of the money that it spends, specifically to look at how it spends money on DEIA activities. Now this is very interesting because the way the executive orders defined DEI activities were in direct conflict with what the mission statements of most of these agencies that give us money require us to do anyway. If you've ever looked at an NSF proposal, it requires that we say what our broader impacts is going to be and how we are going to focus on underrepresented groups. So for every NSF dollar we've ever received, we've had to put in a plan on how we're going to focus on underrepresented groups. Now we have executive orders telling us that that's now illegal activity under the Civil Rights Act of 1964. So you do have some creative folks who are writing these and turning things kind of around to make it make sense for themselves in a giant game of semantics. The things that they put out there as DEI activities, making it sound like in the media, like if we hired people or fired people or only were allowed to hire people from a certain group of people, has actually been illegal for quite some time. The Supreme Court outlawed that type of activity. That's not what our DEI activities are, and that's not what is actually under attack. We are not doing any DEI activity as a state who receives federally funded research, and I'm speaking on behalf of all the institutions in the state of Alabama who receive these funds. We're not doing any illegal DEI activity as defined by former administrations or by the Civil Rights Act of 1964. This is to broaden participation and figure out why some groups have been underrepresented for so long in the STEM fields, in the sciences, in the creative arts, and what we can do to make it a more even playing field. And so there was major confusion right out the bat as to how we could do the work we've been told we have to do if we can no longer do what we were told we have to do. So that came out immediately. The OMB started sending out notices. I have a member of my staff here, Chris Rinker, and we immediately in our professional role had to go through every single dollar we've ever received and determine if it was being spent on this illegal DEI activity. Shortly after that, there was a group of states that filed suit, and a court entered an injunction to say, nope, you're not going to stop activity on anything that's considered DEI activity until we have a chance to review it. Shortly after that, we got, on a Friday afternoon, I happened to be at an Auburn University gymnastics meet, we got a notice that the National Institutes of Health was going to cut our indirect rate. Across the board, everybody in the country was going to be capped at 15%. Now this had a lot of misinformation around it as well, because a lot of folks in the media were saying that That was extra spending, extra money we were getting. We shouldn't be having that money in addition to what we were getting. And that is a false narrative that I would like to try and clear up and get the right information out. Indirect costs, as some of you know that are connected to Auburn University, are the real costs of doing research. It's just the things we can't split up to specific scope of work. But if you've ever been through a space study at Auburn University and your role at Auburn University, and you know that we have to account for every single foot of space on campus, and we have to identify whether we use it as instruction space, research space, or other space. And then we take that and we take every other expenditure throughout the 2 years that we negotiate this for to determine how that money was spent. Was it spent on the benefit of research, on the benefit of instruction, on the benefit of athletics? And we end up with a very small pot of research expenditures that we spent that we consider research overhead. It's the same thing a business would call their overhead or their cost of doing business expense. It's a real cost. It is something we are spending to even get these contracts. It's the power bill. It's administrative salary. It's tuition for grants that won't cover tuition. These are things that are an actual cost that without we can't do. If I go work at a Subway shop and I only charge my customers the cost of the bread, the meat, and the lettuce on the sandwich, I'm not going to stay in business very long because I have to pay my employees, and I have to pay my power bill, and I have to pay rent, and I have to pay insurance, and I have to pay advertising. Those are costs that I can't charge per sandwich to my customer. I'm not going to say, and that's another 2 cents for the power bill. So we have a federally negotiated rate that takes that all into consideration to make the accounting of that easier. But let me tell you, there is no pot of money that the federal government gives out that is more audited than this money. When we ask the government for it, we have to tell them exactly how we're going to spend it, and it has to be within a very defined scope of work. It has to be allowable, it has to be reasonable, and it has to be consistently treated at the institution. Beyond that, it gets audited every single time we spend money. We have to explain how we spent it. Was it for that scope of work? Was it reasonable? And was it consistently treated within that institution? At any time, we know a desk auditor can come in and look at our books and open it up. And so we have to make sure it goes through several layers of internal controls to be able to spend that money. At closeout, we have to give final financial reports showing how we spent every single dime of that and make sure that we move anything off of that fund that we should not have asked the government for. And on top of that, every single year of that project, no matter how many years it is, we have to send in financial reports and status updates of what the science or what the research that was performed during that time and how the money correlated. I'm telling you, this is the wrong pot of money to be looking at for frivolous spending. So, going down the timeline a little bit longer, I'm going to wrap it up because I know I have a short amount of time, but the NIH cap was then stopped by the courts, and they said, nope, you're not going to stop that. And so again, we had whiplash from, we're going to 15%, nope, we're back to using our regular rate. And March 14th, over 50 institutions went under formal investigation as part of anti-DEI crackdown. So even though the courts had stopped some of that, they were still going after that. Alabama, the University of Alabama Tuscaloosa was named in that, so they are currently under federal investigation for illegal DEI activities. In the April 23rd, the executive orders to cut funds to DEI foreign link schools came in. In April 24th, the U.S. Department of Transportation threatened funding loss over DEI and immigration policies. Shortly after that, even though there's litigation right now about the NIH cut of indirect costs, the Department of Energy 2 weeks ago sent us a notice saying we had to cap our Department of Energy indirects at 15%. And immediately that same group of states sued, and immediately there was an injunction ordered. So again, that happened. And then April, Chris, I think it was 2 days ago, the NSF updated its funding priorities. And that very closely looks like it is following a report filed by a certain Texas senator who filed a report in February, the anti-woke funding report, and it listed over $2 billion worth of funding that it determined was frivolous DEI and other spending. There were projects from the state of Alabama. All 4 R1 institutions had projects in that list. Since that came out, and since this update by the National Science Foundation, across the state there have been stop work orders on projects that had been identified as the federal government as no longer aligning with the National Science Foundation new priorities. Those new priorities cut out DEIA activities, as well as some language about supporting Israeli institutions that it just kind of sits there as a random bullet point. And those have affected complete stop work immediately orders. One of those at Auburn University was a fellowship for a graduate student who was doing work to determine why more females don't end up in the STEM fields. That's the big bad stuff that's getting stopped at work. We have been told by NSF that there is not a list of naughty words and that we are kind of making that up. I will say in Senator Ted Cruz's report that he actually filed, his Appendix B is a list of words that they used that are DEI words that they say are troublesome and that made them come up with this list. And you may have seen it in the media, some of these words are sense of belongingness, discriminatory, historical, trauma. These are the words that they use to identify what should be frivolous in that $2 billion and what should receive stop work orders. So I appreciate my time. That was a quick rundown of what's actually happening. I just want you to remember, if you take nothing away, this is $916 million worth of impact in the state of Alabama just in a year, just from the 4 R1 institutions. And if we lose that federal funding, we halt the forwardness of even basic science. And I know, I can see the writing on the wall that maybe the goal of this is to turn this over to capitalism and let companies run research. But if that's the case, companies aren't going to invest in basic research. Basic research is high risk, and it has it's a very long return. It's not going to be something the private sector invests in. And if we halt basic research, we don't ever get to the applied research, and we will fall behind. And there is a chunk of that happening in this state that is changing the world. The projects that I've been involved in, the projects that are happening at UAB, the projects that are happening at UAT, and the projects that are happening at UAH are world-changing projects. And if we lose the funding to do that, we will fall behind not only as a state, but as a country. Thank you.
I don't really think our next speaker needs an introduction because I don't think I've met anybody in Lee County that doesn't already know her, but I'm going to do it anyway. Dr. Nicole Carter. She's originally from Durand, Michigan, but she's been a resident here in Auburn for 21 years. She attended Northwestern University School of Medicine in Chicago, Illinois, and did her pediatrics residency at Duke University. She's been a practicing pediatrician for 26 years, and she currently practices at Wellstar Pediatrics in LaGrange.
So I hate going after Amy Thomas. She spends all day being smart, and I spend all day swabbing throats and looking at ears. So lots of pressure here. Thanks, Amy. I didn't want to mess a lot of things up when you're talking about science and public health. There's a lot of words, and so I mostly wrote everything down. Not as good at talking off the cuff unless I'm talking about kids' triathlons. So I'm mainly going to talk about public health, which is near and dear to my heart. I hadn't planned on being such a community advocate until COVID decided to disrupt our entire world. So that's kind of where I've been living now for the last too many years. So first of all, public health is not political. Let me say that again. Public health is not and should not be political. As I speak for... All of us are affected by public health, whether it be infectious diseases, cancer research, or access to health care. And it's hugely important that our local, state, and federal governments care about this too. I also want to say that I'm not against making America healthy again, in the purest sense of the words. Our country has work to do, and I see it every day, and I'm work in progress too. We need to ingest far less processed foods. We need to get outside more. We need to turn off social media. We need to drink more water. We need to run more like my husband does. But the current administration is using this phrase and at the same time doing things that don't align with this mission. I'd like to highlight some of the decisions made over the last 95 days that are harming Americans. There's probably 3 million, but we're going to hit some of the highlights. The United States has pulled the U.S. out of the World Health Organization and instructed the CDC to no longer communicate with the WHO. This weakens international efforts as well as our own ability to respond to crises like infectious diseases and natural disasters. The Trump administration has fired or laid off over 10,000 civil servants from the Health and Human Services. That's led to chaos and ineffectiveness across the board. Key gatherings like the National Vaccine Advisory Committee and the Presidential Advisory Council for Combating Antibiotic Resistance have been called off. Any research into vaccines that might be used to fight probable infectious diseases that are considered most likely to cause the next pandemic, such as the bird flu, have been canceled. Important information about bird flu has also not been allowed to be shared publicly by the CDC over the last 30 days. That's what I do every night. The current administration's dismantling or erasing multiple departments of the CDC and NIH, including the Office of Gun Violence Prevention, the Department handling HIV prevention, and the Department researching traumatic brain injury and concussion. Further financial cuts are in the works, and experts say that if these cuts take place, the FDA would have to cease routine inspections at food facilities. Budget cuts would also eliminate funding for the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration. Critical research on the next frontier of cancer, Alzheimer's disease, and diabetes is being canceled. Secretary Kennedy has been an entity unto himself. He's continued to spread disinformation, again, a long, long list, most notably linking vaccines to autism. And he's spending millions of taxpayer dollars investigating a link that has been debunked thousands of times over the last 30 years. And he's going to find the cause by September. In recent days, there's been also talk of HHS creating a national autism registry, which violates both HIPAA and privacy laws. Secretary Kennedy has continued to spread disinformation about the measles virus and its treatment and prevention. He has waffled on support of the MMR vaccine, as well as promoted treatment of measles with vitamin A, cod liver oil, and antibiotics for a viral infection. This disinformation has also led to children being admitted to the hospital in Texas for vitamin A toxicity. CDC laboratories that do research regarding drug-resistant sexually transmitted diseases, as well as hepatitis, have been closed. In the current budget proposal, the Toxic Exposures Fund has been cut. This fund cares for veterans exposed to burn pits, Agent Orange, and other toxic substances. The Department of HHS has eliminated the advisory committee that handles the newborn screening test. This is done on all babies at birth and screens for over 100 diseases, including cystic fibrosis and PKU. Because of the firing of staff at the CDC, there were no personnel available to investigate newly discovered lead poisoning in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. This is the first time the CDC has not been able to respond to a tragedy like that in at least 50 years. Because of firings at the FDA and USDA, the committee that oversees meat inspection and microbial contamination in food was terminated. This means that there's nobody monitoring for outbreaks of E. coli or salmonella in our food. The Trump administration is attempting to close all Head Start programs nationally in the newest budget proposal. Funds approved already for local food banks and the Emergency Food Assistance Program have been canceled. The current administration is canceling grants to schools that allowed them to buy food from nearby farms for school lunches. And this is only a tiny short list of some of the destruction that's been caused by this administration to our federal health agencies. Also, attempting to erase DEIA from our federal health agencies is harmful, unscientific, and purely idiotic. There's no way as a medical professional to properly care for people without thinking of their gender or their race or their sexuality. Sickle cell anemia is primarily a disease found in the African American population, for instance. Concussions are more prevalent in female soccer players versus male soccer players. NIH and have also been purged of DEI terms and unfortunately replaced at times with paragraphs of propaganda. Also want to talk a little bit about access to health care and medical insurance. The current budget proposal, as I think most of us are aware, that's in front of the House and Senate involves cutting roughly $1 trillion from health and human services. No matter how much the Trump administration and some of the GOP insist they're not cutting Medicaid, Medicare, temporary assistance for needy families, SNAP, or WIC, there is no way, and this is what pretty much any reliable source says, there's no way to remove $1 trillion from the budget without impacting these needed programs. Estimates say that $800 billion would be cut from Medicaid and over $200 billion from SNAP. In this congressional district alone, 42,643 of Mike Rogers' constituents depend on SNAP benefits. In this district alone, 59,421 children under the age of 19 and 10,430 seniors over the age of 65 depend on Medicaid for health care. Medicaid also covers people with disabilities and pregnant mothers in this county and around the country. Medicaid provides the largest percentage of funding for children's hospitals in this country. Without Medicaid, most children's hospitals would close immediately. It also pays for 40% of rural hospitals and clinics. It also covers up to 2/3 of seniors in nursing homes in the United States. Again, public health is not political. It is not a Republican or a Democrat or an independent issue. Public health is a human issue, and the current administration is destroying our ability as a country to keep ourselves and our families and our neighbors and our communities and our world healthy. Thank you.
Beth Gerthoff was a program director for the Sustainable Intensification Innovation Lab at Kansas State University. There she was part of the USAID Feed the Future program and worked specifically with research, teaching, and extension programs in Haiti and Guatemala. Before joining the team at Kansas State, she was the Rowe Endowed Professor in Crop, Soil, and Environmental Sciences Department at Auburn University. During her 28 years at Auburn, she conducted research and taught in the area of soil fertility with an emphasis on turf grass fertilizers. She is a fellow of the American Association for the Advancement of Science, only one of 6 current fellows at Auburn University. In 2019, she served as the president of the Crop Science Society of America. She is a former Fulbright Fellow, having served in Mauritius. She obtained her bachelor's degree in agriculture and master's in soil science from the Ohio University, and her doctorate in soil science from Oklahoma State University.
Hi, everybody. I see so many people I know, and I get to talk, and I don't have to talk about how to manage your Bermuda grass. You can get me afterwards. So I use this phrase a lot, and the phrase is, a rising tide lifts all boats. And we know that if we have a good football year, we see an increase in applications to Auburn University for the next year. A rising tide lifts all boats. USAID was our international tide. They were soft diplomacy at the softest. They created a means for us to impact millions of people across this planet. In case you know, it stands for United States Agency for International Development. It represented 0.3% of our entire budget, $71 billion a year, started in 1971 by JFK. Starting in January, anyone associated with the program with USAID got a stop work order that was to last for 90 days. The result of that was that everyone who worked with us as international partners was fired. So my entire staff in Haiti, Guatemala, Senegal, Cambodia were all laid off with nowhere to go. Those of us who work for universities, I worked for Kansas State, used set-aside funding and the goodwill of the various universities to survive as long as we could. I was fired on April 12th. Illinois, where the soybean innovation lab was, they let them all go in 1 month. It depended on the universities. I'll speak specifically for the 19 Feed the Future innovation labs that funded research and innovation, education, and extension in the agricultural sciences across the world. These 19 universities were all housed at American universities, the rising tide that lifted each of those universities. They were almost 70% in red states. Florida housed the Cattle Innovation Lab. The Fisheries Innovation Lab was at Mississippi State. The Peanut Innovation Lab was at the University of Georgia. The Fisheries Innovation Lab did innovative work in Cambodia under the leadership of 2 consultants that worked for Auburn University. I worked for Kansas. Nebraska housed the Irrigation Innovation Lab. So when they were shut down, which they all were except for one, the other innovation lab in Kansas, which was a new one for sorghum wheat breeding and a changing climate, because Jerry Moran stood up for his people, and that senator spoke, and he did it early, and he did it with great bravery because he was a Republican. And he was able to clearly show how that innovation lab helped the farmers of that state. But all these innovation labs helped the farmers of the state. Who do you think grew the peanuts that went to Haiti? They weren't grown in Haiti, they were grown in the US. Who do you think helped produce the soybeans that fed the fish in Cambodia? The last time I was in Cambodia, we were accompanied by 15 soybean farmers from Missouri who understood the value of USAID for lifting the water and carrying the boat. And of course, what I want you to understand when you're having coffee with somebody or talking to somebody or walking your dog down the street like I was the other day, and my neighbor wanted to talk to me about how evil Joe Biden or how evil Biden was and how corrupt USAID was, you can talk to me about projects that USAID might have funded that you don't agree with. There's some I didn't agree with. But don't tell me it was evil and corrupt and mismanagement. Because every quarter, I can tell you about the paperwork I had to fill out. And I had to fill out finances that were approved by both Kansas State and the country and the universities with which I worked. I had no less than 3 to 4 eyes on my accounts at all times. And like Amy said, they could come in at any time and take a look at what we were doing. They were terribly worried about the appearance of graft and corruption. It's a different argument to say you don't agree with what we do as opposed to accuse us of corruption. And those are 2 different discussions that I'm perfectly willing to have. So as people want to talk to you about USAID, and the other argument is, well, why can't we just spend that money at home? The answer is we do. All those farmers that grew all those crops for the Food for Peace project, it's now gone. All those peanuts that produce food supplement for starving children, it's rotten on the dock in Savannah because there is no mechanism to move it to Haiti or any other country where it's needed. All the food warehouses in Senegal are gone. They were robbed by the bandits because the people that we paid to guard those Senegal, all those warehouses were all fired in February. All my chickens that I paid for in Haiti for some really innovative research, I think they're feeding a whole bunch of people in Haiti right now, which is a benefit, but not what we wanted. So as you think when people talk about USAID, understand that for 0.3% of the federal budget, that tide lifted a lot of goodwill, and it's gone now. And we have created a vacuum. And who do you think is going to fill that vacuum? Who is already coming in? China. The Belt and Road Initiative of China. And they were waiting for it, y'all. They were waiting for it. And they're going to come in, and they're going to do things, and we are never coming back again. Not in my lifetime. It's not. I was on a phone call with Guatemala yesterday because I'm working unpaid because we're trying to get some stuff going. And the Foreign Service officer in Guatemala, who has lost her job, and she's not sure if the State Department will hire any of them, said USAID will no longer exist as of August. And that's a really sad legacy to leave beside. So again, when people want to talk to you about it, a rising tide lifts boats, and we did do good things. Thank you.
Just as a quick aside, I worked in the application of hard power for 30 years. I can tell you, we get far more influence for far less money with soft power from my organizations like USAID. I had the great honor and privilege to work with USAID personnel on 2 occasions overseas. And there was no finer organization the United States government ever built. And for it to just be dismantled is a shame. Warren Allen Tidwell is originally from Walker County, Alabama, and I mention that because if you're from Walker County, you need to be named Warren Allen Tidwell. He has been organizing in the rural South for over 25 years, developing networks of thousands of resourceful rural people in response to natural disasters and more recently pandemics. He is now the executive director of Across, an organization that is dedicated to growing community resilience in the rural places where they work, with place-based solutions such as air property support in Camp Hill and opiate crisis response in his home county of Walker County in central Alabama. The organization focuses a unique approach tailored for each area. And with no disrespect to our other speakers, this may be my favorite line in any biography. Warren believes in the Tao of Bill and Ted and believes we should all be excellent to each other. Ladies and gentlemen, Warren Tidwell.
Yeah, I had to make you guys laugh because I'm going to talk about some pretty heavy stuff tonight. As you said, my name is Warren Tidwell. My mama calls me Warren Allen. I'm the executive director for Across. That stands for the Alabama Center for Rural Organizing and Systemic Solutions, a big name for an organization that works in small towns. We are headquartered in Camp Hill, Alabama, and it is a 2-year-old organization that was formed in the aftermath of a horrific climate disaster in Camp Hill in the form of a hailstorm. And 2 weeks after that hailstorm, we were also the double disasters of then dealing with a mass shooting that involved our children. So what I'm going to talk about tonight is why that was formed, the work that we've done, and how we have absolutely been punched in the gut repeatedly by the Trump administration with absolutely no help from men like Mike Rogers and other representatives for us. This cardboard cutout's done more for Camp Hill, Alabama. So, March of 2023, the storm hits. Baseball to softball size hail. It destroyed 90% of the automobiles in the town and affected 90% of the roofs. This is a town that is 60% below the poverty line with no grocery store. There's a Dollar General on the other side of 280 and numerous seniors who live alone. And seniors 85 and older, their homes are the only thing that they own. Now, 85% of Camp Hill own their homes, 75% are paid off. We learned in the aftermath when we didn't get a FEMA declaration on top of that we couldn't even go after USDA grants because we had so many air property issues in that community. So we worked with an organization known as Clear Landing and some professors from Auburn University. It's the Alabama Air Property Association, or Alabama Air Property group, and it's Auburn, Tuskegee, Alabama A&M, the Extension Service. And so we were looking at, without being able to get this help, because air property is a slow process, what can we do to fix these homes? Now, in the last 25 years, I've worked every major disaster in the southeastern United States. Thankfully, they've gotten the disaster declarations that they deserved at the time. But we surveyed the landscape and we saw the EPA Community Change Grant. Now, as a new organization, a small growing organization, we knew that we'd have to find a partner to go after that. We found a partner in Groundswell, located in LaGrange, Georgia, and they were awarded this grant. Then, of course, the memo comes down in January. Now, keep in mind, we've gone through 2 years of trying to fix homes where the hail went through metal roofs, through the walls of modular homes, destroyed decks in the community, and annihilated the car stock that was there, to the point that, of course, the people who had to try to get jobs to get to the work that they, their jobs they had, it was even more dire. On top of that, the shooting that occurred in Dadeville after that storm sadly, of course, killed some of our best and brightest children and injured dozens of them. People who were displaced by this storm, their children were killed and injured. They we've got one family in particular, their son was paralyzed. To say that this community has been through hell in the last 2 years is putting it mildly. And now, my soul is worn really, really thin, so it's going to be really hard for me to keep my emotions in check as I tell this story, because I am angry. And I'm upset because I am side by side with the very people that these decisions are affecting in terrible, terrible ways. When we heard that we were going to get the EPA Community Change Grant, we were ecstatic. We're talking about dozens of homes, the roofs. We could keep people in their homes. And even after an effort that brought in over working class folks, our small organization, over $1 million in material goods, 500,000 shelf-stable meals, tens of thousands of dollars of tarps, roofs tarped, retarped, again and again. This was an answered prayer to a lot of people. And as you can imagine, it was just like, really honestly, the day after the shooting when we found out that this federal spending had been frozen and we wouldn't be getting this grant. And so we kept working with the organization, and they reassured us that things were working out. At the current time, the strange thing is some people are able to draw down the funds and they're able to access these various grants and things like that, particularly red states. And strangely enough, of course, with us being in a red state, working with a red state organization, we're not one of those people. Things are incredibly upside down. I don't have to tell y'all this. We are well and truly through the looking glass on a lot of levels. At this time, the funds aren't there. Our organization that has done everything honestly, ethically, by the book, all the conservative folks that I know, that's how you do that, right? Immigrants, do things the right way, and things will work out. Well, we're seeing that is not true. And it's not true when it comes to what we have been trying to do. Now, as someone who has also worked overseas and with USAID personnel, this has been particularly, hurtful for me as an individual, because I'm hearing now from northern Ghana, where I work, that it is harming people that I know and love there as well. This is something that every time a decision is made, it feels like that we're getting kneecapped again, and we're getting kicked in the gut again. However, we're not going to stop. We're going to keep working together, and we're going to figure this out, and we're going to keep working in the communities that we are in, because with the support of the people of East Alabama, who've been absolutely wonderful in keeping this going, we will figure this out. And I don't know, but whenever I can advocate for my people, I'm going to, and I'm going to talk about this. I have information for the organization for the work that we're doing. Please come see me. Please come get a flyer. Because in all the years of me doing this and all of the 25 years, there's always been a solution, a resolution. Things have always generally, in a lot of ways, gotten better. We've figured it out, but we've had to do it ourselves. Because right now, we know we don't have local representatives at the state level helping us with this. We know the federal government is making decisions that is absolutely kneecapping all of these local organizations doing this. The USDA cut out half of the food options. I'm sure some of you saw the East Alabama Food Bank's plea for help. That is who we depend on for 250 households within Camp Hill. The LIHEAP, Low Income Heating and Heating Assistance Program, has been all but gutted. That's dozens of our residents. These are programs that feed people and literally keep people alive from freezing to death. So I ask that again, that you come see me, because I can't depend on our cardboard cutout here and all of this. We need you. I apologize. Our neighbors 20 minutes away are hurting. We have seniors, 80, 90 years old, in danger of losing their homes. We have children who are going to go hungry, and we can't get anyone to do anything as our representatives. So I ask that you help us. Thank you.
Start off by introducing myself. Congressman, my name is Lee McInnes. I am a disabled veteran of the United States Army. I spent 6 years enlisted in Army intelligence and 28 years as a civilian with the Department of Defense in various intelligence-related assignments, including Iraq and Afghanistan. My last job was the Acting Director of Intelligence, Surveillance, and Reconnaissance for the combined NATO-U.S. Special Operations Task Force in Afghanistan. Congressman, you've said in the past that you care about our national security, our military service members, and our veterans. I have one question for you today, but I want to review some of the events of the last 3 months before I do. One of President Trump's first actions as Commander-in-Chief was to fire the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, the Chief of Naval Operations, and the Commandant of the Coast Guard, removing the only person of color and the only women on the Joint Chiefs. They were replaced by 3 white males. The President's nominee for Chairman of the Joint Chiefs did not meet the legal requirements to serve in the position. What was your reaction? Sir, you said nothing. Congressman, in Afghanistan, I had the honor to serve with and lead not only U.S. troops, but troops from our NATO partner nations. Nations that when America was attacked on 9/11, did not hesitate to come to our assistance. President Trump has denigrated that alliance that has kept the peace in Europe for 80 years and instead allied us with a pariah nation run by a totalitarian dictator that started the largest land war in Europe since the end of World War II. And Congressman, you have said nothing. While Russia is conducting aggressive cyber operations against a broad swath of our nation's information infrastructure, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth ordered all cyber operations against Russia be halted. And you said nothing. As part of the administration's anti-DEI policy, Secretary Hegseth ordered the removal of 26,000 photographs from DoD websites, all depicting people of color, women, and members of the LGBTQ+ community. He also instructed Arlington National Cemetery to take down stories about our national heroes if they were black, women, or members of the LGBTQ+ community. Public outcry forced reversal of many of these decisions. But Congressman, you said nothing. On March 24th, it was revealed that senior members of the administration's intelligence and defense organizations used Signal, an unsecured third-party app to discuss detailed operational plans concerning strikes to be conducted in Yemen. In the last 2 days, we learned that Secretary Hegseth used Signal to give advance notice of those strikes to his wife, his brother, and his personal attorney. Anyone with any experience in military operations knows this puts our pilots and crews' lives at risk. But Congressman, you said nothing. Congressman, you've claimed many times that you care for our veterans. Let me just run down what the administration has done for, or rather to, our veterans in the last less than 100 days. 1/3 of all federal employees being fired are veterans, many of them disabled veterans. Counselor to the President, Alina Habba, defended these firings by saying we have a fiscal responsibility to use taxpayer dollars to pay people that actually work. This does not mean that we forget our veterans by any means, but perhaps they're not fit to have a job at this moment or not willing to come to work. The administration summarily canceled $2 billion in Veterans Affairs contracts. This will negatively impact VA operations, and it will have a double impact since many of these contracts were targeted for disabled veterans-owned small businesses. With no notice, the administration fired 2,600 VA employees, including the entire staff of the Veterans Crisis Line dedicated to preventing veteran suicide. It was later announced that 875 individual professional service contracts had also been eliminated. The hiring freeze at the VA has prevented the recruitment of critical staff members, resulting in the closure of inpatient beds at VA hospitals. The administration fired the directors of VA Centers for Female and Minority Veterans. Documents confirmed that to be legitimate show that the administration's ultimate goal is to fire 80,000 VA employees, constituting 20% of their workforce. If multiple veterans groups have agreed that if that happens, it will result in the closure of the veterans healthcare system, which 9 million veterans rely on for their healthcare every year. Workers at the VA have stated they are currently working under a, quote, invisible cloud of dread, unquote, and these actions will certainly cost veterans' lives. But Congressman, you have said nothing. Finally, on March 25th, 4 soldiers from the 3rd Infantry Division were reported missing while on a training mission in Lithuania. Their armored recovery vehicle was later found submerged in a peat bog. And the bodies of Staff Sergeant Troy Knutson Collins, 28, Sergeant Jose Dunez Jr., 25, Sergeant Edmund Franco, 25, and PFC Dante Titano, 21, were recovered by April the 1st. The people of Lithuania's capital, Vilnius, immediately created a memorial in front of the United States Embassy. Thousands of Lithuanians, including the Lithuanian president, attended a memorial service for the soldiers held at a cathedral in Vilnius. Thousands more lined the roads as the soldiers' remains were driven to the airport on April 4th. But when those soldiers arrived at Dover Air Force Base, Delaware, for the dignified transfer of their remains, President Trump was not present. He flew to Florida to play golf and to attend a golf tournament.
On our money.
And Congressman, you said nothing. So let me sum up and ask my one question. While the administration has replaced people of color and women with lesser qualified white men in military leadership, while they have shown their anti-DEI policies were never about fair hiring, but an effort to remove people of color, women, and the LGBTQ+ community from the historical narrative of the U.S. Armed Forces, while the administration has undermined arguably the greatest alliance for peace in world history and instead sided with a warmongering dictator, while the senior officials of this administration have put the lives of our service members at risk, while the Trump-Musk administration has done the math and decided it's cheaper to bury a veteran than to care for one, and while Donald Trump disrespected the memories of 4 soldiers who gave their lives in the defense of this country and dishonored their memories, you have said nothing. So my question, Congressman, is this, and I ask on behalf of the 41,000 veterans in the 3rd Congressional District and the 100,000 service members and their families currently serving from the state of Alabama. What will it take for you to say anything? Congressman, I thank you for your time. Okay, we're going to take a breath.
Vote him out. 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 Vote him out.
So what we're going to do now is open the floor up for your questions to the Congressman. I'm going to give everybody a minute. The microphone for you to use is located here in the central aisle. We would appreciate it if you line up behind that microphone, and then if we get to the back wall, you turn down that wall over there. Please, and then I'll have a few words to say before we start the questions. So please come to the microphone if you have a question for Congressman Rogers.
You should run against him.
There's a couple of things we want everyone to keep in mind. First of all, I want to thank all the people who have the courage to stand up and speak, but for everybody else, there's a couple of things we want to keep in mind. First, many of you will step to the microphone with passion for your issue. We applaud that, but we want as many people as possible to ask questions, and we have a limited amount of time. So please keep to your point, and if you see me giving you the wrap it up, please do so. Second, we are a nonpartisan group. So don't use your question to attack any single political party. Please limit your questions to policy issues associated with the current administration. Third, to the audience, we have not pre-screened any of these questions. So please be engaged and enthusiastic, but also be courteous and respectful. Finally, to prove that we haven't flown in political agitators from left-wing communities like California, New York, or Mountain Brook, please introduce yourselves and tell us where you're from. If everybody understands those guidelines, ma'am, please.
Thank you. My name is Tracy Whitty, and I'm a constituent in Opelika. As a psychologist who trains future clinicians, many of whom go on to work in the VA for their careers, I'm alarmed by the recent developments that are degrading the quality of care for veterans and weakening the VA's ability to train the next generation of providers. In many VA facilities, the poorly thought out return to office mandate has created a space crisis where clinicians are conducting confidential telehealth sessions in shared rooms, compromising the privacy and clinical integrity of those sessions. And on top of that, practicum training slots that we rely on for our graduate students to be trained as VA psychologists are being cut because there's not enough space. And that shrinks the future workforce. This raises a deeply troubling question. Are we watching the intentional erosion of the VA system to pave the way for privatization? What is Congress doing? What are you doing, Mike Rogers, to ensure that the VA remains a strong, publicly funded institution capable of delivering high-quality care and training the professionals that veterans depend on?
Are all these questions going to be sent to him?
Yes, ma'am, right here. Let me say
He'll
one
get
thing
these
about the
and be
privatization
asked
of the
to answer
VA,
them
which J.D. Vance has
somehow?
advocated. Okay? Everybody in here understands about Agent Orange, everybody understands about Gulf War syndrome, and everybody understands about burn pits. That data was all collected from VA hospitals where veterans went to seek their care. It took 18 years to get Agent Orange recognized, 19 years to get Gulf War syndrome recognized, and it's taken 17 years to get burn pits recognized. This is chronic health problems associated with veteran service. If we privatize the VA, we would have to go to 9 million separate doctor's offices to get the records to make those diagnoses. That's the importance of the VA healthcare system. I'm sorry to interrupt
That's
you.
all right.
Please, go ahead.
Cheryl Gledden, Auburn, Alabama. Congressman Rogers, everybody in this room fears for their democracy. We fear for our country. Thus, my questions to you are, what about morality? What about empathy? What about doing the right thing? Your website describes you as a Christian, and I accept that as your belief and your practice. But given your Christian beliefs, how can you stand by while President Trump pursues unchristian policies? This should be very personal to you. He has reduced aid to the poor around the world and here at home. He's reduced medicine to the sick and afflicted around the world and here at home. He's fired thousands of people on whim, thrown people out of the country without due process, allied himself with tyrants, celebrated inhumane prisons, tried to silence universities, and worked to cut back on science research that helps all of us. This is only a partial list at the moment. In the past, he attempted to overthrow the election. He lies nonstop, and you know this. Congressman Rogers, I believe you're better than this, so I'm asking you to please stand up, raise your voice for those who are less well off, both here at home and around the world. Please try to make us, America, the good place, the good guys again. Thank you.
My name is Kathy Zeman. I am right here in Opelika. I am a service-connected disabled vet who works at the VA, who is under that cloud. But I have a question in regards to the new situation that Mr. RFK Jr. has created. He's talking about creating a autism registry because he wants to track us or them. He says it can be cured even though it's a combination of 250 plus genes. My question is if we are so worried about these individuals, including my son, who is a Boy Scout and A+ student, why are we cutting Medicaid? Why are we why are we increasing the price of the medications that they need for their ADHD or their mood stabilization? Why are we not funding assistive communication devices? Why are we doing everything we can to make these highly intelligent, college-educated to underemployed individuals be treated and stigmatized? I also would like you to explain. I would also like you to explain to me the difference between putting them on a registry now and what was done in early Nazi Germany with Asperger's, Hans Asperger's, and others who wanted to purify the race. Especially considering how active a self-admitted autistic individual like Elon Musk has been in the destruction of this government.
Yeah.
Congressman, my name is Rain Smith, and I'm originally from Connecticut, but I'm a soon-to-be Auburn graduate and JD candidate. I've been a student for 17 years, and it doesn't look like I'm going to be done anytime soon. As a 9-year-old student, a gunman opened fire 10 minutes from my school at Sandy Hook Elementary. And last week, as a 21-year-old student, a gunman opened fire on USF's campus. So with that, I only have 2 questions. Is that just something that happens? And is Auburn University next? Good answer. We students are unsurprised by your silence, but we appreciate your cardboard thoughts and prayers.
Hi, everybody. I'm Tyler McCollum. I live in Auburn, but I am from Eclectic, just down the road. I got in trouble all the time when I was a kid, and my mama used to say, Tyler, you know better. So in that vein, Mike Rogers, you know better. Your constituents invited you here to speak to us, and you refused. As our representative, Mike Rogers, you know better. The Secretary of Defense has now twice gotten caught texting sensitive military data on a non-secure platform. You've said nothing. As the chairman of the House Armed Services Committee, Mike Rogers, you know better. Yeah. Nearly 300 men have been ripped from their homes and sent to an El Salvadorian prison where they are rotting without access to counsel and without a defined sentence. They were afforded no due process. As an attorney, Mike Rogers, you know better. Elon Musk and his little boy bandits have been raiding the coffers at the VA, Social Security, USAID, Department of Education, and I could go on and on, all services we depend on. The power of the purse belongs to Congress.
Yes.
And as a 22-year member of Congress, Mike Rogers, you know better. Everything he can to favor Russia in the conflict against Ukraine, our ally. As a formerly outspoken representative against Putin's authoritarian regime, Mike Rogers, you know better. We know who you are, Mike Rogers. We know you know better. We need you to do
better.
That's also a really hard act to follow. My name is Margaret Barst, and I've been a constituent. I've lived here in Auburn, Alabama for about 8 years now, but I proudly call my hometown Washington, D.C., and it is a heck of a lot more than a swamp. And having grown up there, I've seen how hard civil servants work. And I think we all know here, most of us, that the myth that civil servants, or it is a myth that civil servants are just lazy bureaucrats who don't deserve the money that they earn. I'm the proud daughter of a civil servant. He worked at the Department of Agriculture. I was a civil servant myself for 5 years and swore an oath to the Constitution. But there is one group of civil servants right now who I find are not doing their jobs, a fundamental part of their job. And Mike Rogers, that is Congress. A fundamental part of your job is to act as a check and balance against the executive. Has been in hard positions before. We went through Nixon history, but what is different now, and this comes from across the spectrum, what is different now is that Congress is not doing its job and acting as that check and balance. So my question to you, Mike Rogers, are when are you gonna do the right thing? When are your colleagues gonna do the right thing and earn that job? Because if you can't do your job, if you've also given an oath to the Constitution, right now you're not doing that. So my question is when? And if you're not gonna do that, fundamental part of your job, we'll find someone else who can.
Yes.
Hi, my name is Lloyd Bryant. I'm a resident of Dadeville, and I am a caretaker for 2 disabled Vietnam veterans. I appreciate the information that you put out. I am here on behalf of one of those veterans, and that's my father. He is a 78-year-old man that went to Vietnam. He is disabled, and I am here to ask you the same questions that he asked me, which is, am I going to stop getting paid? Are they going to take my benefits away from me? So every day that I have to hear that question, I want to ask you that same question. I tell my father constantly that this was a contract that the United States signed with my father when he agreed to represent the United States and to go be an employee of the United States. There's a contract that they've signed that we would take care of them, yet now you're cutting services that we promised these veterans that they would have once they came back. So my question to you is going to be, you were on the Armed Services Committee, and you know that this state relies heavily on the veterans and their services here. So what are you going to do to stand up and make sure that my father and everyone else that is affected has those services? When are you going to step up and make sure that Alabama takes care of its vets and that we're not closing the VAs when they need them so desperately? So that is my question to you, Mike Rogers.
Hi, I'm Brittany Anderson. I'm originally from South Bend, but I live in Auburn. I am affected by the policies, like I live here full time. And in case you didn't know, this week is Lesbian Visibility Week, and hi, I'm a local lesbian. So, my question for you, Mike Rogers, is what are you going to do to protect your queer community here in Auburn, Alabama, in Opelika, in this community? We're not here trying to convert your children to be gay or trans or anything like that. We just want to live our lives. I just want to be able to walk downtown holding my girlfriend's hand and not worry that I'm gonna get harassed or beaten in the street. I just want to be able to get married one day to my partner. So what are you going to do to protect your queer constituents who just want to exist in their lives.
I'm going to read because, kind of like my buddy Warren, I'm full of a lot of grief, and it's just best that I stick to exactly what I came to talk about. My name is Ivory Reddit, and I'm here to speak on behalf of the students and families and communities who have been impacted by the uncertainty around the USDA 1890 Scholars Program. The 1890 Scholars Program has been a beacon of our community. It's provided financial support, career development, and a pathway to public service for students attending historically Black colleges and universities. One of those universities is Tuskegee, which is just down the street. I will tell you this is very personal to me because I had a very, very bright daughter who had tons of scholarship opportunities. This opportunity came across our desk, and she turned away a lot of excellent opportunities for this public service. The recent reinstatement of this program brought a sense of relief and hope to a lot of us. However, every day we're hearing information about the dismantling of the USDA. And what we've noticed is a lot of the employees that support, manage, and lead these USDA scholars are being fired. So the program is there, you gave it back to us, but there's no infrastructure. What's the purpose? If there's no one to support her, to guide her. Even at the local levels in colleges, those individuals who manage those students are being asked to leave. This is creating a troubling contradiction. How can we say the program is active if there's no one there to operate it? This lack of clarity and stability does not just affect administrators, but it affects real students who made decisions based on this promise. Many of them come from unrepresented backgrounds. They are striving for careers in agriculture, science, and public service. They deserve more than silence and a shrinking support system. I urge you to speak up for those programs. Please reach out to your contacts within the USDA. Advocate for transparency. Ask hard questions. Because programs like the 1890 does not just affect students, but it will affect the next generation of leaders, researchers, farmers, scientists, change makers. If we let this fade away quietly, we will lose something greater than just a scholarship. We will lose trust, opportunity, and momentum. I appreciate you just taking the time to listen to this, and I just ask you to continue to support where you can the 1890 USDA program.
Hi, Mike Rogers. I'm Katherine Jackson. I live in Opelika. I teach at a Title I school in Opelika. And just my main question is, with the dismantling of the Department of Education, how can you ensure we will take care of our kids and our students? Thanks.
Hi, Mike Rogers. My name is Elizabeth White. You might recognize it from emails and phone calls you've received. I'm not Elizabeth White, the reporter, but a retired English teacher, and I live in Auburn and have for most of my life. My question was answered somewhat earlier, asked before, so I'm asking a question from a high school classmate of mine who's a doctor of psychology at Alabama State, and she was unable to come due to recovering from surgery. So she sent me this to ask on her behalf. She first commends you for your support of a bill to expand the Talladega National Forest. But then she says, as chairman of the House Armed Services Committee, she reminds you that the military has said that global warming and climate change are threat multipliers. Many in the military have pressed for a transition to cleaner energy to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions, which are a leading cause of climate change. The Inflation Reduction Act has many provisions for moving our economy away from fossil fuels. What are you doing, she asked, to support those provisions already passed by Congress, including the many incentives for businesses and residences to weatherize their homes or invest in energy-saving appliances or equipment? Thank you. Her name was Marcia Rossi. Thank you.
So my name is Rick Pavick, and I'm from Auburn. I'm one of those people that came here like for a couple years, and that's been 30-some years now. Still here. I used to work with fisheries, so I did a lot of work that was funded by USAID. They were a great organization. I can't believe they've done what they've done. But I want to bring up kind of the whole reason we're here. Nobody's brought this up. Why are they doing these cuts? Okay, so I want to ask Mike Rogers, why do I, as a high school teacher, pay more taxes than the President of the United States? Planet, but someone that can fly his girlfriend up into space, we're just, everything's not right here. And last question would be for him, who I've never voted for, by the way. Why are you enabling a lying con man, grifter, who's a 34-time convicted felon?
Woo!
Congressman Rogers. My name is Les Simonton. I am an Auburn University retiree. We know you're intelligent. We know you see what's going on. We know you see that the Trump administration is tearing down this country. You have the power to do something about it. When, sir, are you going to grow a spine?
Are there any more questions from the floor? Going once, going twice. Okay. First off, I want to thank all of our speakers tonight, not only our 4 speakers who came here to give us their expert opinions on the subjects that they covered. And I also especially want to thank all of you who stood up and spoke tonight. You have all demonstrated what should be at the core of every democratic nation, the ability to speak in public without the fear of retribution. We would ask you to watch the Indivisible Auburn Opelika social media pages. You can find us at Indivisible Auburn Alabama on Facebook and Indivisible Auburn Opelika on Instagram and YouTube. Where this, if you had so much fun you want to see it again, this will be posted later on tonight. We have 2 upcoming events we want you all to attend. Our next Indivisible Auburn Opelika meeting will take place on Star Wars Day, May 4th, at Town Creek Park. Additionally, we'll be at the Resting Pulse Brewing Company for Drinking Liberally on May 15th. Everyone is invited. More details will be available on our social media pages. Also, next week, we will be supporting Indivisible Birmingham in 5051 and the students at the University of Alabama as they organize a rally in response to President Trump's visit to the campus in Tuscaloosa. I want to stress that we are supporting Indivisible Birmingham in 5501. We're not organizing the event ourselves. We will get you as much information as we can when we get it. Let me say a few words in closing. I know tonight many of us are just freaking dog tired. But I have hope. Last week, Senator Raphael Warnock was on the Colbert Show. I think it's okay if y'all are voting for either Warnock, clapping for Warnock or Colbert. But Colbert asked the senator, what is the value of hope? And the senator responded, "Hope is everything, because when you lose hope, you stop fighting." My hope comes from anyone who knows me is not going to be surprised by this next statement. My hope comes from a speech given by a Colombian politician 80 years ago. Jorge Gaitán was the leader of the Colombian Liberal Party, and in his speech he said the words, "El pueblo unido jamás será vencido." And for anybody who speaks Spanish, I apologize. Gaitán would not see the impact of his words would have. In 1948, on the verge of winning the Colombian presidency as the liberal candidate, he was assassinated. But his words, "El pueblo unido jamás será vencido," spread across Central and South America. And when the people marched to oppose dictators, they chanted, "El pueblo unidos jamás será vencido." In the early 1970s, we learned of the saying in the United States, and we translated it into English. And if you know the words, say it with me. The people united can never be defeated. The people are uniting. Tens of thousands of protests, both large and small, have taken place all across this great nation. On April 5th, 5.2 million people joined Indivisible's Hands Off protest, making it one of U.S. history's top 5 largest mass protests. Last Saturday, in honor of the 250th anniversary of Paul Revere's ride to warn the people of Massachusetts the forces of tyranny were encroaching, Americans once again participated in mass protest. Estimates say that between 3 and 4 million people participated in the No King protest. And in places across the nation, people like you are coming together to address their elected officials. You have come here tonight to express your thoughts to our congressman, even if he is not here. I applaud your efforts and desire to defend the Constitution and the rule of law in this country. And Indivisible Auburn Opelika, thanks to you for your support in allowing us to join you in this process. As I leave, I will ask you to stay informed, stay active, and to paraphrase the Reverend Jesse Jackson, keep your hope alive. We have seen public outcry have impact. And as John Lewis taught us, sometimes you have to go out and make good trouble. So good night, good luck. Go out and see if you can make some good trouble, because the people united can never be defeated.